This is Janet Bodoff, co-author of Speaking of Atlantic City, Recollections and Memories, and you're watching John the Ninja, the Great.
Ladies and gentlemen, how you doing? It's John the Ninja back in the dojo, back in the dojang. You know, it's the John the Ninja Studios, and you know how God is always good to me. I'm a bad Christian. I do things wrong, but I gotta say, you always have these moments in life where you have a chance meeting with somebody and they end up doing way more for you than you could ever do for them. And I'm just thankful. Today I have authors. These beautiful ladies have created this book called Speaking of Atlantic City, Recollections and Memoirs. Who I have here is Leesa Toscano and Miss Janet Bodoff. They both are longtime friends. Over 20 years together, they have been doing their own thing, but have been together, keeping the friendship alive. A little bit about Leesa. She's a poet, she's a writer, an actress, she's an Atlantic City native, and Miss Janet is a retired reporter who's actually worked not just for the Philadelphia Inquirer and the Bulletin, but also Rolling Stones. We're going to have some questions for you about that, miss. But the idea here is that they have such a love and understanding of not just New Jersey, but Atlantic City and the importance it has had, and not just in Jersey, but the United States as a whole. I had to speak to these ladies and get the 411 about the book and their experience living in that city. So, ladies, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Good.
How are you?
Yes.
I'm A-OK. Miss Leesa, it's good to see you, mademoiselle. And
Good to see you as well.
I know we had a good talk when we were in Ventnor when we first met. You withheld so much, and it was like you already told me so much about what you did. Mira, I was thoroughly impressed by both of your resumes. But I wanted to ask you first, considering that you are a writer and you had the children's book. I was curious what got you into writing, and then Miss Janet after her. What made you guys fall into this art of writing and creating?
I started at a very, very young age. I always enjoyed writing, and my first published poem was when I was 13 years old, and I did the poem and I called it a dramatic poem. Nowadays, they call it poetry slam. But I wrote because I also enjoy performing. So that's how I started as a young kid.
And you, Miss Janet, how did you fall into writing?
Well, I didn't fall into it. I'm a writer. You are what you are. People try to be sometimes things that they're not, but I've been writing since I was very young. Little sayings and poems, and I had an aunt who loved what I wrote and used to rip pages out of my notebook and take them. Anyway, I've always written down my thoughts and my feelings. So I first got published when I was about 13 or 14, and and I've always been writing.
Now, for me, I'm a very musical guy. I love playing. It's like a very integral part of my personality. Like if I hear a riff or a song in my head, I have a physical need to do it. And I always look up to these certain figures that have set the template for how I create music. Everything you do, when you write, when you create any form of art, you paint, it's always your reflection. It's your spirit in it. But there's always these guides. I was wondering if you ladies had particular writing guides, any authors or any particular columnists that when you were younger or you first started to read that caught your eye and you took like, you know what, I like this a lot. Let me keep going.
Oh, there's so many, so
Mhm.
many authors.
Yeah.
As a little girl, I read so much. Even now, I enjoy reading.
I used to be a voracious reader, and anything that had words on it, I would read. And I used to read a book every week or so. But then I had some things happen in my life, and I not kind of lost concentration. And I read still, but not as much as I used to. When I was very young, I had an uncle who was an artist, and he gave me a book called The Best Loved Poems of the American People, and I read that from cover to cover. I still have it. I memorized one or two of the poems, and still remember them. Anyway, I always wrote, and My father used to say, you go where life leads you. And it sort of led me into a writing career. I'm also an artist, a painter. Spent my professional years for a long time as a graphic designer, worked in advertising, wrote copy for brochures. So always in the arts.
How did you fall into Philadelphia? Because Philly has been my second home. It was a brutal start, and now it's like a place of solace. But I read that you worked for the Inquirer and you worked for the Bulletin. I still have my Rolling Stone question, but how, being that you're still in the area, how did you go back and forth between AC and Philly and etc.? Did you live in Philly for a time?
I was born and raised in Philly, and I lived there till the late 1990s, and then moved to Jersey. My great aunt, my mother's sister, owned a hotel at Arkansas and Pacific in Atlantic City. And so our family was always in Atlantic City. There was not one year of my life that I didn't spend time in Atlantic City. It was the vacation spot for our family and a place to visit our wider family. And the book actually started because we were in a writer's group. Mm-hmm. And I wrote a story about my aunt's hotel. And Leesa said she liked the story. And she said she thought it was the beginning of a book. I said, I don't think I have a book in me. Excuse me. And she said, well, we know all these other writers. We're both writers. We can put a book together. That's what we did.
Just to go back to something I stated earlier, over so much time you guys have formed this friendship. How did you guys actually end up meeting the first time?
I was the director of the Marty Wilson Art Center. And
I was the assistant. Yes.
Yes. And, Leesa used to come there because she had a little girl who she wanted to expose to the arts, And I don't know, we just started talking and found out that we had writing in common and just became friends.
Isn't this the same spot where you won that, the Angel of the Arts Award? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's right. That is correct.
Yeah.
For volunteering.
Could you elaborate on that award for the people that don't necessarily know that establishment and why that means so much?
What we did, and we took the arts into the school system and also for disadvantaged youth and also urban youth. And we just taught them the arts of arts and crafts or writing. And through the years, I've done a lot of volunteering for other organizations as well, including American Mothers. And so it just went on. All these places, all the volunteering, I would bring my little girl with me, who is now 30 years old. But at that time, she would come along with me. So she would get a taste of the arts as well.
Before we hop into the book, friendships, marriages, they always fascinate me because of longevity. So many things can happen in life where a big thing could happen or a small thing can happen, and then it just kind of breaks the friendship. I do repeat this question a lot, but I was curious, what is a time in your lives where the other person encouraged you to continue your pursuit in writing or acting or working in a particular field that they enjoyed? It was becoming too much to bear, or even a personal matter? What was a time that you guys remember fondly of each other where the other said something or did something and it was just like, you know what, thank you, and it just, you hold on to it? There
was a big gap between the writing of the book and the publishing of the book.
I'm smiling.
I know, me too. I sort of dropped the ball for a while, and if Leesa hadn't stayed with it, there would be no book.
I said, no, we have a book here. We have all the information. We are going to publish it. I said, let's do this. And Janet, what did I do? Send query letters out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I sent so many query letters out, and we were getting rejection after rejection after rejection until we we got a yes,
Yeah, we
which
found the
was
right niche.
yes, yes. And that was the History Press, Arcadia History Press. And they were very happy to have us and the book. They were very interested. So it goes to show you, you can't give up. You got to
Right.
keep on going.
Yep. Yeah, it's that classic story of Colonel Sanders went to hundreds of restaurants with his little spices, and he didn't give up, and now the whole world knows Kentucky Fried Chicken. Leesa
That's
did the
right.
same thing. She didn't give up.
No.
Yeah. So we're both writers, but we have slightly different skills. I have more experience
Yes.
as an editor. Leesa
Mhm.
has had, more experience with letter writing and finding a publisher. So I think that's a clue to a good partnership. If you're working on a project and you have different skills, so that
Mhm.
you can share the project but not step on each other's toes.
Yeah, that makes a difference. We
Yeah.
put our strengths together.
Right.
And there's some, strengths that I may have and she may have, and we put it together and we create. And it's called a good collaboration.
Knowing the history behind Atlantic City, and then when I travel to these different states and people like, oh, that's, it's not a big deal or anything, and they forget how really pivotal Atlantic City was in
Mhm.
helping the nation as a whole, whether it was the mob scene, whether it was not, like, it being the first big casino city other than Las Vegas, because Vegas was pretty much behind AC for a time.
Mhm.
Could you ladies elaborate when you first started working on the book? You guys finally sat down, like, okay, let's gather these stories together, because it wasn't just your stories, it was others too. What was one of the first stories you ladies saw where you're just like, it did take you back to that time? Like, for me, when I'm in certain areas, Stonewall Jackson's house is probably the best one I got. I was in there, I kind of immersed myself with this idea of, like, if I was in there, I played the piano in that room at his house, and back then that's like a death sentence. What
Wow.
are you doing touching that? So,
Wow.
I kind of set myself back into that setting. What was a story where you guys, it was so well stated, either you guys said it or somebody else wrote it, but you could see it, you could feel it just like it was back then?
I think most of the stories are like that. When you
Yeah.
read it, you can actually visualize it, and it does bring back memories. The first person that we interviewed was Pauline Renshon,
Yeah.
and we dedicated the book to her because of her support. And Janet, you could go on a little bit more about Pauline.
Yeah. She was a wonderful lady. She was born and raised and lived her whole life in Atlantic City. We also dedicated the book to her because she passed away before the book got published, which made us very sad because she was such a lovely person. But the story, she was very funny and very interesting. Her dad had a hot dog stand uptown, and she used to, when she was, I think she said 9 or 10 years old, I can't remember right now, she used to walk up and down the boardwalk with a,
A
a
board,
board a
like an
board
ad
on,
board.
yeah, on her shoulders that said, eat hot dogs from Joe's. And anyway, to put your child to work day. Um, anyway, she was lovely. She worked in her dad's restaurants her whole life. She ended up working for the county, but
And she worked in the same building I did, and it ended up that Pauline was best friends with my aunt,
mm,
and I had no idea, and it just worked out that I found out that way, that she was best friends with my aunt and another friend of the families.
Mm,
It's a small world out there.
yeah.
Everybody seems to know everyone else.
Atlantic City is only 48 blocks long. It's
That's
it's
it.
really a small town masquerading as a big city.
I've had
True.
big city parties in AC. I ain't gonna lie to you, ladies. I've had some
Yeah.
godly times, but I've had some good times. But that's part of the charm of the city, I believe. You know, it's there's so many memorable moments. I'm thinking of my friend now. She's a dear friend, Gwen, who was telling me stories when I first met her that her and her family would go to AC and just relax, which is funny because like maybe a week or two there, we were both in the city. I was busy, so I couldn't say like, "Hey, what's up?" But it was funny just to remember that when I saw her post like, "Hey, I'm here doing this." You know,
Yeah.
usually there's always something to learn from a task you're doing, and for a book like this, learning about people's lives, researching, there's always a moment where you read something you didn't know or something that was like, oh my god, it makes you smile with like with glee. It's like, oh, I'm happy I learned that. What were some stories where you read something about somebody's life and either you did the same thing or you just learned something either about the city or their life that kind of made you go, wow, I would have never expected that.
Most all of them. Okay.
All of
Um,
them. Yes.
yeah, there were things, you know, as I said, it's only 48 blocks long, but so many millions of people have come here, visited, and lived here, moved on, moved back. They all have their own personal experiences, and that's what the book is, the personal experiences of a variety of people that we all, anyone who's had any contact with Atlantic City, we all can relate to and learn something because it was someone else's experience at a place where you were or at a time when you were there. It's very relatable.
The book is available in bookstores and also Amazon.com as well. And of course, we have books available to sell.
You guys have added to it, but for you, what would you say for personally, you as a person, what was your favorite story to contribute to the book? And it would have to be from your own life, not necessarily the
Yeah.
people that were participating.
For me, it was the summer I worked at Hi Hat Joe's and hanging out on Chelsea Beach when I was a teenager. It was my coming of age summer. A funny part of it, when we were looking for pictures, Arcadia is well known for books with a lot of images in them. And they wanted a lot of pictures in our book too. So when I was researching them and trying to gather the pictures, I went on some Facebook pages about Atlantic City, and this one man had posted a lot of really nice pictures from around the era that my story was written. So I emailed him and asked him if he had any specific pictures of Chelsea Beach. It used to be so crowded. You couldn't, if you walked up to the water, you wouldn't walk on the sand because the blankets were so butt up against each other that you have to walk across people's blankets to get to the water. Anyway, it was very nice. And he sent me a picture. And when I got it, I couldn't believe it because right in the front of the picture, a mob scene of kids on the beach was my first boyfriend. So it was a nice coincidence.
Summer, and you found that? That's so cool.
I know. I was really happy about it. Unfortunately, I couldn't reach him to tell him about the book. So his business was closed and I didn't have I had no idea where he lived.
He'll figure it out when he reads the book. He'll reach out.
Okay.
What about you, Miss Leesa?
There's so many different stories that I really, really felt dear to. I can speak about my stories. My stories are coming of age stories about growing up in Atlantic City, which was very memorable. And when you read the stories, you can actually you can reminisce about your own teenage years as well. And a lot of my stories are about resorts The first job that I ever had was at resorts when it first opened. So there's several stories about that as well, of the different celebrities that I met. Some nice, some not so nice.
Is there any particular places on the boardwalk you ladies hold dear that are still considered retro, still considered of that time period?
I can only speak for myself. I am so
Right.
old that all of those places are gone now. They're just a memory, you know. Where my great aunt's hotel was, there's a giant fake rock for the Wild Wild West casino. Okay. Nothing is the same as it was, which is part of the charm of the book, that the stories are all about the way it was.
Well,
So
for me, I go by Stockton University in Atlantic City, and that's where my Atlantic City High School used to be when I went to high school. And I also graduated from Stockton, so it's kind of interesting to go by and I look at Stockton and I go, I went to high school. It was once a high school there
mm,
in that building, which they tore down and then they made Stockton. So very interesting. Things change in Atlantic City quickly.
yes. But there are pictures of the old Atlantic City High School in the book.
Yes, indeed.
Have you received someone like personally writing a thank you for what you guys have done? I know like the reviews are pretty spectacular online. It's like, hey, this is great. But you know, there's always that one person that reaches out to you and says like, you know what, thank you for doing this. That meant so much. And sometimes you kind of let it roll off the back, like, hey, you know what, I understand. And then sometimes for another reason, it strikes you a little bit more of like, you know, wow, I did that, and I wasn't expecting to feel like this for this person who's thanking me. You know, any examples for you ladies?
Nobody's
No.
written to us, but one of the writers in the book, Atlantic City native named Molly Golobkow, um, wrote a story about the hotel that she grew up in on St. James Place. And she was so inspired by remembering her teen years in this hotel that was sort of at the end of the prime era of Atlantic City. And there were a lot of pimps and hookers and people in a different echelon of society, I guess, who were living in the hotel. And
Back in the day.
yeah, so she wrote about that for our book and was so inspired by her memories that she ended up writing a whole book, and it's on Amazon now too. So we were happy that we inspired somebody else to write a book, and she has thanked us numerous times.
We keep in touch with some of the writers too that are in the book, and a couple of them we've done events with them, like with Molly. We go out to events with her as well.
We've been doing book talks and book signings, and we've invited writers in the book to join us and
Mhm.
read some of their stories. And it's really been a wonderful experience for us because it almost instantly provokes memories in the audience that we're speaking to. And you can see them kind of want to fidgeting in the seats and kind of want to raising their hands. And, you know, yeah, I remember this happened on Steel Pier to me when I was a kid. And, so a lot of people are relating.
When you work so hard to achieve something, there's very pivotal moments in your past where you've drawn from the experience. You know, there's a great story I have. One of my best friends, Samuel the Prophet, that's what we call him, Samuel the Prophet. He was getting married and he asked me to do the DJ work, and we had one thing after another happen for, you know, the music not working, to not being able to plug in the music, to the sound. And from work at the radio station I was at, I remembered the key thing was we couldn't get the music to play. And I remembered a certain way you can configure a phone to a speaker. And I was like, can we do this? Save the whole wedding. At least I'm just saying that to be funny. But it was a very important moment where it's like, hey, you know, we figured out this really big part to making their day special. You know, while writing the book, did you ladies encounter a problem where you had the solution and it brought you back to another time where you had the same thing happen and you learned from that experience to apply it?
Well, we learned about the publishing with the first book.
Oh yeah.
That's
Yeah.
pretty much.
Yeah. Well, the children's book that Leesa wrote, I did the illustrations for, and we had a terrible experience. It was a self-published book. Leesa got some advice from some other friends who had worked with this publisher, and being a graphic designer and understanding computer graphics, I did the illustrations and then I laid them all out and sent the computer file to the publisher. Got an email back that they were not interested in my layout of the book, and they would like to get the copy and the illustrations in separate files. And I couldn't understand why they didn't want it. It was, I did all the work for them. I thought it would be welcomed. And then we got the book, and it was a 24-page self-cover book. 4 pages were great big ads. Do you want to publish a book? Call 1-800, we'll rip you off. Call Publish America, we'll publish your book.
It
They've
was a
been,
scam
yeah,
publisher,
yeah,
and they left the town
yeah. They were
because they
sued,
had
but
so many lawsuits.
right, they're gone now. So, and
Yeah.
even though that book, Eat Your Vegetables, is still on Amazon, I don't think you can get a copy of it because the
No, you
publisher is
can't.
gone.
No, you can't.
Yeah.
You can't. That's for sure.
Each of us might have the last 2 copies in the world.
Yes, I think so. Well, we have to work on that. That's the next thing we have to do all over again.
Yeah.
That's rough. You ladies are so resilient. I could think of like friends that have tried to publish and write, and it's like it's always a back and forth between like, should I do it myself on Amazon or should I get somebody to do it? To find the press that you found that is actually interested in preserving American history and etc.
Right. That's the key, to find your niche, to find a publisher who publishes the type of book that you've written. And you can go to hundreds of publishers who have no interest in the particular thing you're writing about. But if you've written a mystery novel, you want to go to a publisher that's put out thousands of mystery novels, and you might have a better chance of getting yours picked up. So,
with speaking of Atlantic City and recalling everything, this book is actually something special. What are your current goals for it to push it? Or what is a goal? Is like, if we could just have this happen, this would make the day, or just we'd be over the moon for it.
I wanted to get it in gift baskets for high rollers at casinos, and just have the casinos buy a lot of books and give it out to high rollers when they give them the basket of fruit and champagne. It would be a nice little gift. And, that's been hard to crack.
We're working with a publisher for that.
Yeah.
Hopefully they'll get it. If they don't, then we have to go to each casino and try to talk to the people in that department.
Yeah.
I would assume you ladies do have the connections for that, being that you have the pool in the area.
It's a pretty tight market to get into. Everybody wants the casino money. When resorts first opened, I remember my colleagues, graphic designers, publishers, printers, all rushing to Atlantic City to get a contract with the casinos because that's where the money was. And they're still hit upon a lot, So it's not that easy.
My mother, she wanted me to ask this one. She's worked the Miss America pageant as a nurse for some time. I think she started like 2013 till the pandemic happened. And she's had so much fun. She kind of understands what it's like for me being at the radio station, meeting these rock stars, or just seeing the different things happening. Do you guys have any stories pertaining to like the pageant itself, or say Sinatra was coming down? Any moments that it's like, what, I always cherish being in the same room as this event or person from your experiences that actually could have been in the book or are in the book?
There's stories about the Miss America pageant.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. I wrote a story about the Miss America parade, but my experience is not with Miss America. Mine is with rock stars because I was a rock and roll critic for a daily newspaper in Philadelphia. And very proud that I was the only reporter at the time who got to interview Bob Marley. And, I met the Beatles, I met a lot of amazing performers. And, but no one at the Miss America pageant. I was just a citizen, um, at the pageant. I bought tickets and saw the pageant. I watched the parade. I watched it on television when I couldn't be in Atlantic City, but never met any. Well,
I miss it. I miss the parade. I miss the America
yeah,
pageant here.
yep, yeah. It was great fun. And it's a shame they couldn't continue it.
I had to ask you, because you were so prominent in the Philadelphia area and you worked for Rolling Stone, have you ever had the opportunity to work with Pierre Robert, the DJ at WMMR?
I knew Pierre Robert. I was friendlier with Ed Shockey and Michael Tierson. I knew them well. And I also started, well, not exactly, but I worked for Concert Magazine, which was the publication that Electric Factory Concerts gave out at all their concerts. And we were only 2 blocks away from WMMR. And every time they had a live on-air concert and they wanted an audience, they would call us. So I sat 2 feet away from Bob Dylan on the Rolling Thunder tour and, listened to his concert. I can't even remember. Tom Waits. I don't know. There's a song in Hamilton, The Room Where It Happened. And at my age, I was in the room where it happened, some of the most amazing performers.
Yeah, Pierre was my first DJ I was under. I interned at MMR in college, and that's how I went down the rabbit hole. So I was under.
Where did you go to college?
There's a place called Eastern University near Villanova.
Oh, okay.
But I did want to ask, since you worked with Rolling Stone, did you ever work with Ben Fong Torres?
No. I had a couple of freelance things in years ago that, I didn't work at the paper. I can't even remember the people who I would work with now because it wasn't a huge thing. I also did publicity shots for record companies. If there was ever a performer in Philadelphia that, they needed publicity stills, I would do that. It was just what kind of, if you're in that milieu, and if somebody knows you know how to use a camera, they call you. Or if you know how to write, I need this. Can you shoot over to this concert and write something, So, and it's different than now. I was thinking, we're talking about self-publishing and all. It's so different now. There are so many people who are self-publishing. The book that was made into a movie with Matt Damon when he gets stuck on Mars.
Yes, I know The Martian.
Yeah, that was a self-published book. And look what happened to that, So it's different now.
Miss Leesa, you've also acted, so I got to ask you now,
Okay.
what are some of the defining roles you've had or moments?
When I was younger, I did a lot of different, local plays. And I think the funniest role that I ever had was Dracula the musical. And it was so funny. And I had to sing about an insane asylum. And it was just, I loved that role so much. I was Mina in that role. I would do it again in a heartbeat.
But tell him all the movies that you've been in.
Oh, yes, yes. Atlantic City, Lemon Sisters, The Pickup Artist. I don't know. You can actually go on and see the different movies that I've been in. I've done a lot of extra work, like background, in movies. The last one was I was a background in Bruised that they filmed here.
Is that
I don't
what's her name?
Halle Berry.
Halle Berry, yeah.
Yeah, with Halle Berry. And Halle Berry is actually very petite. On on the screen, she looks like she's like maybe 5'9", you know, really tall, but she's petite. She's a little bit shorter than I am. And I was like, oh, how about that?
Mm.
But I do like acting, and I do some stand-up comedy
Which
as well.
another thing, you know, because I mentioned this, and this we actually did get to talk about, you know, writing and performing the written word can be very daunting because, you know, it's knowing your audience, or it's like maybe the joke it's good on paper, and if you read it it hits, but then when you say it out loud it's a totally different dynamic, you know.
That happens, sure. That happens all the time.
Did you feel like it took a while for you to adapt to stand-up comedy and being able to get those laughs? Not saying it's going to be like a roaring crowd, but getting a consistent, you know, hey, that the whole crowd liked it. How did you approach it from a writing standpoint?
Well, I was lucky in the aspect that I met and befriended stand-up comedians. And one day I was sitting with them after their show at Borgata, and I was telling a story, and they were hysterically laughing. They were saying, "Oh my God, girl, you got to get on stage." So what happened was they, you know, it was Larry Bash. He said, "I'm inviting you to a club. It's called Route 66 in New York City." So that was the first time that I went up to New York to do a story, a funny story. And everybody seemed to like it. And you just try it out. You can try at open mics before you do a show.
I've done that. It went very interestingly. I ain't gonna lie, but it's invigorating to go up there and shoot your shot. There's always the most important question I ask my guests, because I feel like it's something that kind of it's a guiding light. You know, when I was interviewing a particular individual, his name's Ted Aguilar in a band called Death Angel. I asked him what's the best piece of advice he's ever been giving, and he told me just live. What's something that, you know, when you're just going about your day or something gets serious, it always pops into the back of your mind, and you just kind of, you know, let me hold on to this?
I was going through not the greatest time of my life, and wanted to do a lot of things, and was talking to him about it. He took his business card and wrote on the back of it, the best advice I ever got. And this was long before Nike. He wrote, "Just do it." And that's it. Just do it. Don't second guess yourself. Don't think all the things that could go wrong about it. Just do it. Take your shot, you know. That was my best advice.
My advice is what brings you joy in life? Whatever brings you joy and happiness, you have to try it. You have to do it. That's it.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, what a wonderful time with these lovely ladies. I got to tell you, the talk we had prior to was a hoot. We can't share those stories. You know, we got to get the book first. But, right. You know, ladies, thank you so much. I have Miss Janet Bodoff and Leesa Toscano. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it so much.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. And guys, again, I'm telling you, go check out, speaking of Atlantic City, Recollections and Memories. It's going to bring you back to the past, and it's going to teach you some things about the city that you want to know. As always, be smart, be mindful, rock on, and God bless you guys. As always, Ninja out.
Woo, baby, you listen to John the Ninja. Oh, your ears are about to go on a vacation. John the Ninja's got what you need.